A very warm good afternoon to one and all. This is the third day of the 3-day webinar series on language, literature, and media. Dear participants, if you have any queries, please drop them in the chat box. Let me invite Mr. Arun Francis, Faculty, Department of Journalism, to introduce the speaker of the day.
A very good afternoon to one and all. Today is the third day of our 3-day webinar series. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our resource person of the day, Mr. Sabin Iqbal, senior journalist and author of the bestseller novel Cliffhangers. He has worked in India and the Middle East. He was editorial director of Kochi Muslis Binale, senior editor at Tehelka, and senior assistant editor at Business India. He is now festival director and co-curator of Madhurabhumi International Festival of Letters. His Cliffhangers is an impressive coming-of-age novel set with an sleepy coastal village in Kerala. The novel brings to the life of Charain and its people. Through Musa, Jahangir, and Taha, and various other characters, Sabin Iqbal narrates the fractured identities and exposes the frailties of humanity, which makes the book a beautiful read. We are eagerly waiting the release of his new book, Shamal Days. Let me welcome you to this who found time to join us on the third day of 3-day webinar series. A small reminder, dear participants, do turn off microphone for the smooth functioning of the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Arun, for having me. Thank you. And before we start, I would like to thank the college for. Can you hear me? Kelkamo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for that kind words about me. I think it's a bit of a flattery, but then thank you. I would like to thank the college for inviting me to be a resource person of this 3-day webinar. I'd like to thank Nina she's a wonderful friend, for entrusting me in this responsibility. We're talking about media ethics. It's a challenging topic at a time that we live in. Before I get into some of my thoughts about media ethics, and I must warn you that this is not a studied piece, or it is not a well-prepared presentation like what you heard the last 2 days. This is just my thoughts as my thoughts as a journalist. I've been a journalist for the last 20 years. I worked in the Middle East. I worked in India. I worked in some of the leading type magazines in India. I've written for them. So I think I have a little bit of experience to talk about where we are at the moment when we talk about journalism and media ethics. And also, before I start, and I would like to give a small link to my lineage, what qualifies me, if so to speak about media ethics. I would like to talk about my lineage as a grandson of Vakka Maulavi, who owned and started the historic newspaper Swadesha Abhimani in 1905. I think, I don't know about the young generation, but the teachers and all should know about Vakka Maulavi and his contribution to social reformation in Kerala. He trailed the blaze of political journalism in Kerala by setting up Swadesha Abhimani, which he started in 1905, and it was confiscated in 1910 by the then King of Travancore for its brave stand against corruption and nepotism, which was rampant in those days. And the king exiled, sent the editor on exile, Ramakrishna Pillai, and confiscated the press. And he reportedly asked my grandfather, if you want the press, come back and apologize. My grandfather reportedly told the king that if without my editor, I don't need my press. These are some thoughts about media ethics. When we are now at a time when we say that the editor is long dead. I'll come to that later. Before that, I would like to say a few words about the time that we live. I'm going to read a few past lines. We are living in an exciting time. Under a crowded sky of satellites and crisscrossing signals, we are thriving in a flat world with knocked down cultures and boundaries. We are communicating in a porous global society of 24/7 news and redundant news breaks. Yes, we are living in 24/7 news, but the news breaks have become redundant. There are no skeletons in the cupboard, no sighs are private and safe between sheets. Communication technologies have revolutionized and redefined our life and the way we live. They have written our habits and behavioral patterns. They have dramatically changed the way we do business and opened new markets and business opportunities for us to buy and sell, be it products, art, ideas, or commodities. During the past couple of decades and a half, nothing has been changed and reshaped more decisively than the way we communicate. So before I come to journalism per se, I want to set the ball rolling about communication, technology, media in a few words. We grew up believing that a pen is mightier than the sword, but now we realize, with shudders down our spine, that a mobile phone can win and destroy hearts and battles more than the pen or the sword could ever do. And I believe this little device has revolutionized the way we live, the way we communicate. It has intruded into our life and completely redefined the way we live. Yes, it's been some years now since we stopped following news. Now what happens is news is following us. The news is now following us everywhere, in the car, garage, on the road, on the bed, and even in the loo. Wherever we go, news follows us. The way news is presented has dramatically changed. With the advent of new media, social media platforms, media companies have begun to look like software firms. And with a clutch of apps, magazines, newspapers, books, music, TV shows, etc., are now being appified. So what is appified? Most of us use different kinds of apps. Our life has been appified. So appification is poised to be a major factor reshaping media, especially news media. We are like to see a direct influence through a proliferation of specialized media apps, and we are actually witnessing that. Also indirectly through changes in consumer attitudes, expectations, and purchasing habits. So something more about appification. Appification throws open the newspapers a powerful marketing and pricing strategy called versioning, which is selling of content in different packages using apps. The apps will help a reader to pick and choose the news package according to his or her budget or preference. It's happening. We all do that. Now, before I get more, deeper into the way journalism is practiced, I would like to dwell a little bit on what's happening to journalism now. Who is a journalist? Journalism, we say, is a fourth, we call it fourth estate, or the fourth pillar in a democracy. It used to be, I think, and at a time when democracy itself is being under attack in different forms, in many forms. Let's not talk about journalism being a pillar. I strongly believe that journalism has been influenced or disrupted by two things. One is technology. Second is corporates. We just talked about the technology part. In the last 2 decades, nothing has been revolutionized more than media has been. We've grown up reading newspapers, and I don't know how many of us read newspaper in the print form. At least some of the people in my generation, that's 50 plus, still do. But youngsters like my children, they don't even pick up the newspaper. So but they what they say is that they are in the know of what's happening. Maybe right. That's what the apps come to play. They get news through different forms of technology. So the journalism has been disrupted by technology. It's been democratized. In a way, it has been destructured by technology. The way that news is consumed is changed, and it has become it's a consumer product in many ways that earlier when we started out, editor is kind of sacrosanct, and we cannot even touch him. We used to enter his cabin with trembling hands. We don't know how we will shout, or so there is this kind of a demigod halo attached to around the editor. But I recently listened to actually I invited Mr. Shashi Kumar, the veteran journalist, to a webinar, not a webinar, to a seminar at the Vakamala Foundation Trust, and he spoke on the death of the editor. It is a powerful speech on a take on the state to contemporary journalism. He said the editor is dead, is long dead, because these days it is the management, it is the corporate honjos who decide what goes into a newspaper or a television in a news media or not. The editor is not doing. He's just another journalist working in the newsroom. The decisions are taken by corporates itself. So what do the corporates need? They're into business. They now, if you look at the media landscape across India, most of them belong to big corporates. So what happens when media is bought by corporates? We cannot report. We cannot report honestly. We cannot report objectively. We have to listen to the directions of the business management of the newspaper or the media outlet. I know I've been privy to that, and I know when in times when the stories have been killed and said we cannot run it. So one, news is long dead. The breaking news culture has killed the what we call news. Every passing minute there is breaking news. So what is news? What is the novelty about it? News is is dead. So has the editor. So the news is dead. The editor is dead. What is left? That's the state of journalism now. And also let's talk about social media platforms. We get news from through WhatsApp. We get news from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all these social media platforms. Is there an editor for all this? No. So who decides to publish? The user. What happens then? You know, when we were, and I was a cub reporter, we file a story. It goes to the senior in the reporting team, the senior the chief reporter. He will take a look at it and he will vet it and he'll make the corrections. It goes to the desk and then finally it goes to the editor, and the editor decides whether it will go in or not. Okay. And there is there used to be a structure. There used to be a responsibility. You know, now it is gone. There's nothing. You can publish anything you want. You have a Facebook account. You can come even live and you can say whatever you want to. So there is no accuracy. There is no objectivity. There is no responsibility. We talk about responsible tourism. Let's talk about responsible journalism. You know, you pick up any local newspaper and go to the local pages. I bet that there should be mostly 10 stories, and 8 of those 10 stories will be about rape, violence, peedanam, kolabadagam. And my daughter asked me once, Papa, why do you want us to read this? It makes us sick. I took a look at it. It's true. You know, we elaborate on how a girl of 5 years old has been raped, how a Veetama has been, you know, brutally killed. I think this. Why do we want to read all this in a very sensational manner? I kept thinking, you know, always, if I were an editor of a newspaper, would I carry this story? No, I wouldn't. So then the question is, should people be informed? Don't they have the right to be informed? Yes, they do. They have the right to be informed about certain things happen, not in a sensational way. I still remember a few years back when a local newspaper carried in an 8-column spread of a photograph how a man was slaughtered into and kept in plastic bags and was buried. And they carried a picture of all that on the front page. What are we doing? That's why the journalism has become, the civility part of journalism is gone. We become apathetic. The empathy part is long gone. Look at the language we use. Is rude, or the language we use on television, both on television and print. It is rude. It is impolite. It is violent. So there is a decline in language that we use. And let's talk about the 9 o'clock syndrome that we all have. The nation has. The nation wants to know. I mean, I call it dead man's debate. What do we get out of all this? What do we get out of this 9 o'clock debate after all? Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's cacophony. No one is making any point. And what do we get out of that 1 hour show of Supreme Prime or whatever prime? Nothing. Just ask yourself. And we get addicted to it, you know. We wanna listen to that 9 o'clock debate. I know. I've been inside a television channel, a couple of them, and I've seen how this been. It's a show. It's a they come, they meet, they have tea. All the these participants in this 9 o'clock show, they have tea, they shake hands, they go down to their chairs and start debating, or fighting against each other for an hour over some topic and they get out, have tea, say bye-bye and go back. Is this journalism? And who has given the authority to these anchors to behave like judges? Who are they? Why do we give them the assumed power, assumed authority to take a call on all these? Can we see one good story, a television story, in the last 1 month, other than this bite gathering? I sometimes feel pity at these junior journalists, at news channels. All they do is that call up people and collect, keep, get these, opinion, these leaders ready for the anchor to speak to. I feel bad sometimes. I look at the television reporters. What do? They just bite gatherers. They go to one person, get the response and pass it over to the news desk, and the other person will go after to get a bite from the other person in that story. Pathetic. This is when we talk about media ethics, we have to look at all these facts. I know there are budding journalists who are listening to this. I'm sorry to say that all I can present is a grim picture. There's nothing beautiful to tell you about journalism, and also about the new generation. I've been interacting with youngsters. I'm sorry to say that the level of GK of these young journalists, aspiring journalists, their level of GK is pathetic. When I still remember when I went to Delhi to become a journalist, and I wanted to become a cricket correspondent, cricket writer. So I went to meet one of the leading journalists, Malayali journalists in Delhi, with recommendation letters from my teachers here in Press Club. I still remember it's a cold night, and I somehow landed, found out his house, and he said okay. He didn't even ask me to sit. Okay, he was like very serious, and he asked me, so you want to be a cricket writer? I said, yes, sir. So who are you? He asked me, and I was like, what? Who are you? Are you Mr. Ravi Shastri? I said, what? Are you Sunil Gavaskar? Are you Dilip Vengsaka? I said, sir, no, these are the people who write about cricket these days. So you are none of them. What do you write? I really, I broke into a sweat. And he said, have you read Neville Cardus? I said, no. Have you read John Arlott? I said, no. Have you read Christopher Martin Jenkins? I said, no. Go back to Kerala, read all of them, and come back after 3 months. Then I'll see if I can place you somewhere. And I was disheartened. It was dispiriting. I came back, never went that side. I never went to Delhi again. But one good thing happened is that I went into the British Council library and read up all these writers. Now, when I asked youngsters about who these people are, and if you want to be a sports journalist, and okay, so who are these people? Absolutely no idea. They immediately Google, So we have kind of what do you call it? I'm not getting that word. Our memory has been offloaded to Google. So we go to Google and we Google what's happening. No, you need to know, as a journalist to work in a newsroom, you have to have a certain level of GK. Anything, be it sports, be it business, be it politics, be it agriculture, be it anything. You need to know, as a journalist, you need to have at least a decent level of competency. And I'm sorry to say, I cannot find that. Don't think I'm very rude, but I cannot see this in the present. There could be exceptions, but 9 out of 10 people are just youngsters are just they don't care. They said as long as Google is there, we don't need this. Point taken. Let me just okay, I want to talk about a little bit about the culture that media creates. Let me just take a look at before that. Hello, you're all there? Hello. Okay. Yep. Let me just talk about. We just talked about amplification. Now there was a time when citizen journalism happened. We all thought citizen journalism is going to be the next big thing. It was a flash in the pan. It just withered away because of the corporatization that happened in media. Big companies bought small media outlets, and now there is no sign of citizen journalists. Most of the citizen journalists have disappeared. So there is one aspect of journalism. When you look at that, citizen journalism came up, finished, nothing. What now we have is corporatization. That's why I said, when the media has by and large been bought out by corporates, we don't have ethics. Their ethics is the greed for wealth and the lust for power. So these are two detrimental factors that is affecting journalism now. There is no accountability to journalists now. Who are we accountable to? I don't know. I read a lot of fake news. We say it's fake. Who decides that it's news? And let's talk about fake news, paid silence. You all know that it's fake news because we live in a world of fake news. And what is paid news? During the elections, I happened to attend a seminar by veteran journalist P. Sainath a few years ago. And he said, clearly demonstrated and ripped apart journalism at that time, showing how journalists have been bought, newspapers have been bought by politicians during election times to write paid news. It looks like a perfect news story, but it is been paid for. So it's sad. There's a death of journalism. When I attended a training by Point Institute from Florida, US, I asked them if they had this phenomenon called paid news in the US, and they said we have lobbying, but we have not been paid to write certain stories. It was, say, 10 years ago. I don't know about now. And now my friend very popular investigative journalist, very famous, Joe, I forgot his name. Okay, he said once his computer has more unpublished stories than published stories, because more than paid news, the paid silence is disturbing, because you've been paid not to write. You've been paid for your silence. So this is where we are at the moment. Paid news, fake news, paid silence. Don't think I'm I'm very pessimistic about journalism or media. There could be a change. There's a wind of change could happen, but at the moment, most of the media outlets in India have been bought by corporates. Now, what we have to look at is the role of PR. What is PR? PR is good in a way. Is good for corporates, but I don't know how many of you heard of Radia tapes. Radio tapes has been brought to light by Outlook, I think, and it is about how high-profile journalists have been bought by very smart PR official or Radia. So this is when corporates come into play. PR people come into play. They decide what to publish, what not to publish. So when we look at journalism, technology has disrupted journalism. Corporates have bought bought up journalism. PR has come into play. So then now the role of the government. We used to be a free, and except a period during the emergency, we used to have a free and fair media landscape atmosphere in India. But then now writers like a novelist like me, used to be journalist, we're all under some sort of threat, or we are all kind of circumspect what to write, and will this create, we're not sure what will rub wrong with whom, because we live in a very volatile society. As a writer, when my book was taken, there was a discussion about adapting it into a movie, and a couple of people backed out because of the communal element in the novel, and I felt, wow, that's news. So we are living in such an intolerant society. So it also and it takes a toll on journalism. We cannot write without scare. We've seen journalists has been shot dead, writers have been shot dead. It's all happening in India. It's nowhere else. So ethical journalism takes a suffering. Okay, and so let me just recap what I have talked about. I know it's been rambling. There is no structure in this speech, but let me try to recap what I've been talking about. The media landscape in India at the moment is not that healthy. That's my bottom line. Only a few editors can stand up to the powers that be. There are only a few news outlets that are independent, but they are suffering. They don't have money. They are not able to pay their staff well. Now, journalists used to be the watchdog of a society. They are no more watchdog of society, because it's all about drawing the line. It's about working for a corporate. They will decide what going. That's a reality. You cannot. The editor is long dead, as I said. It's true. Editor is long dead. It's the manager, or it's the owner who decides what to go in or not. And the proliferation of social media, it has really killed the essence of journalism. Social media is everywhere, and everyone is a journalist and is an editor. You write something, you press publish, you become a publisher. You broadcast, and we know the kind of online media landscape in Kerala. How actually, honestly, I don't know which are good. I mean, I know I follow a couple of them, but others I have absolutely no idea. Where do they get all this news from? Who is the editor? Who goes through all this? Who facts check all this? Nothing. And recently, I have an experience of I've been part of an event, and the report I read about that event is mind blowing, because it's factually wrong, and they have no hesitation in publishing all these things without even checking with us whether it's true or not. So this is one aspect of journalism now, because there's absolutely no accountability. No one is bothered. And also, let me talk about the new generation. It's shallow generation. I'm sorry to say, they don't read. Earlier when we were the young, we used to religiously read newspaper, open pages. Now no one reads. Nobody wants that kind of journalism. So that's to talk about media ethics from a journalist point of view, young journalist point of view. Now, But now we take a look at let me talk about this also. I want you to be an intelligent reader, because when you take a newspaper, you take any headline, you can, if you read it carefully, you can see the slant, be it political slant, communal slant, or corporate slant of every headline. Every headline that we read has a slant. It can be political, it can be communal, it can be business, like corporate. So objectivity is long dead. So I say news is long dead, editor is long dead, objectivity is long dead. That's the situation. That's the state of journalism that we are living with right now. I don't read newspaper these days, because the moment I go through these local pages, I get a headache, because it's all negative news. It's all bloody violent news. So then I wonder if there are no positive news around us. You think it's all grim and glum things happening around us? No. Even in the midst of pandemic, we can find good, positive, encouraging news or stories. When was the last time we read encouraging news? A good feature? No. This is something to be pondered about. This is something that the young journalists should think about. And another feature is like crime episodes or crime beats in our television channels. At about 10 o'clock in the night or 10:30 in the night, there comes the crime story, crime beat. I can't imagine. Just before we go to bed, what we see is gory enactment of crimes. And our kids watch that if they're watching that channel. Before they go to sleep, this is what they see. Now, what do we do? What kind of culture we create? And I believe media creates a subversive subculture in all of us. When we were young, when we talk about rape, it's like, whoa, rape. Now rape has become part of our life. It's become our culture. No one, a rape doesn't turn a hair. No one bothered. Now we talk about 3-year-old being raped. We talk about 70-year-old being raped. We talk about Veetama being raped. Different kinds of rapes, and we report that, elaborately, with very tempting, colorful headlines. What is this? What kind of subversive subculture is this? So it's time that we take a look. We took a look at all this crime beat, Pedanam. That's what I said. The civility has gone from reporting. Empathy has gone from our reporting. Our language has become very rude, violent, impolite. Look at our television anchors. Again, I know I'm repeating, but look at our 9 o'clock anchors. Who are they? The kind of halo they think they have around them is I can't even, when I was working in a news media house in my cabin here, and I can watch them. I can see the anchor sitting there, wielding this kind of imaginary power, calling up people and asking them questions as if he was the judge in a court. And there are people who are ready to answer because they want that 1 minute glory of 9 o'clock. Now, I want to also talk a little bit about literature and journalism. I started out as I always wanted to be a sports writer, as I told you. After my return from Delhi, I was so disheartened. I read up all these books on sports, and I went to the Gulf, and there I started my career as a journalist. Then I got into writing. So I always believe that journalism and writing is connected. I mean, I'm talking about print journalism, where writing is involved. Now we've seen novelists, celebrated novelists doing their journalistic pieces like Marcus, Orwell, V.S. Naipaul, Hemingway. These are writers, who have done excellent pieces in reporting, even non-fiction books. So I cannot connect media ethics to literature, but I can connect journalism to literature by mentioning all these wonderful masters um, um, who have had their part in journalistic writing. I enjoy their reading. I enjoy their reporting because their language. I try to emulate their writing. So I can only connect that part of literature with journalism. But I've been a very vocal critic of the state of journalism at the moment in India. There are only a few people, few editors who have the spleen to stand up against the atrocities being meted out against journalism at the moment, because journalism has mostly bought by the corporates. So since it is under the control of corporates, there isn't much scope for ethics. That's a sad part of it, because corporates work on their greed for more wealth, their lust for more power. And as Bernard Shaw said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the more you have control over media, you can control the society. They can influence voters. They can influence decision makers. They can influence every stakeholder in a society. So media still plays an important role, but they unfortunately and sadly under the thumb of the powerful corporates. So there are still some there's hope to see some light at the end of the tunnel. There are news organizations like The Wire, but I think there's an independent news organization, but they all suffer. They don't have enough funds because the government don't advertise with them. No, so then the question is, where do we draw the line? If you're an honest journalist, you're an honest journalist media outlet, but then who will advertise with you? So these are some very pertinent questions to be asked. A journalist is also a human being. He's a family man. He's got, he need to put food on his table. So where do we balance it? So these are pertinent questions which it's very difficult to find answers for. So it's easy. One way it is easy to point fingers at the corporates. One thing, and I know independent news organization. They have not been able to pay their staff for months, but they are brave. They write stories. So how do we place all of them in a volatile media landscape like that of India? So media at the moment, my take is that there's not much to write home about. It's grim, it's glum. But the only thing that we can do is that we can look back and see how in the past generations media ethics was practiced. Maybe in the next generation we may find some way out where brave journalists practicing brave journalism. I think my prayer is that I should be able to see that happen. Good stories, fantastic investigative stories. And in between, I want to also say a couple of things about when I talk about investigative journalists, we call it spy cam journalism. Is where Tehelka used spy cams effectively to bring out a few scams. It's true, but then sorry, I know I'm rambling, but when I talk about media ethics, I should also talk about the use of spy cams unless we use spy cams in an ethical way or in an with integrity, it is as good as a tool of the mafia. I can give a number of examples where people have been blackmailed after, you know, spy cam. They got visuals of their nefarious connections, you know. So spy cams, the use of spy cams also should come under you know, media ethical conduct. So to you know, sum up, I would say that the media landscape in India at the moment is not that promising. Most of the media houses have been bought by big corporates, big time corporates, and the editor is long dead, news is long dead. It's all sensationalism, and it's all about social media, the online proliferation of online news organization, which have no accountability, which make money in other under the counter operations, which is not ethical. So these are the realities at the moment, you know. As a young journalist, you should get into this field with all this in your mind. You should know where you're heading to. But there are good, still there are a few men standing. News organization, big time. You can you know, still practice. This is still a noble profession. I would do anything to be a journalist again, even though I have stopped being a mainstream journalist now. I'm more into festival curation. I'm more into literature. I'm more into writing, you know. So I'm not a mainstream journalist now, even though I write occasional pieces and columns for publications who ask me for my opinion. So that's how I sum up. You know, it's a volatile landscape at the moment, the Indian media landscape. And thank you once again for having me. I hope I made some sense. You know, I apologize for my ramblings rather than a very systematic presentation like you saw in the previous 2 days. You know, this is how a journalist work. You know, the last minute work. And I thank you for having me. I hope I made some sense. Thank you. എല്ലാരും ഉറങ്ങിയോ?
No, sir. We are all
No.
hearing, listening to you. Dear participants, the session is now open to queries. Sir, we do have a few questions. May I? Sir?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first question is from Rajan Chatot. Sir, you said journalists are no longer watchdogs of the society. Such a categorical generalization will tell upon the morale of those journalists who are sincere to the core. You spoke about paid news and paid silence. Which of these is more harmful in your opinion?
Okay, first, I said journalists are no more the watchdog. If I phrase it that way, I'm sorry. What I meant is that they cannot function as a watchdog now in the present landscape. But however you want to be a watchdog, however you want to write, you're not in a position to write unless the corporate which owns the media that you work for allows you to write. That's a sad reality. I'm sorry if I said you are not a journalist is no longer a watchdog. There are examples of journalists being watchdogs, but generally, when we talk about the Indian media landscape, we are not in a position to that kind of a freedom, investigative freedom is not there. Two, paid news and paid silence, both are equally harmful. Yeah, I mean, in a way, probably paid news gets its nose across a bit because we read it and we believe it is true. In the paid silence, we don't get to read it at all. So there is a slight difference between paid news and paid silence. I hope I made very clear. Hello, Nina.
Sir, there is one more question.
Yeah, please.
It's from Dr. Shirley MD. There are a few journalists who had turned novelists. Is it disillusionment that makes a journalist a novelist? That's an interesting question, I guess.
I can't answer for others, but then for me, the urge to write has been there for years. I wanted to be a writer, and journalism was the closest thing to be a writer for me. And also I realized, sadly, not sadly, that I was not good enough for anything else. I was not good in science or maths or anything other than humanities, and that too English. So my escape route was journalism, and my journey towards writing. So anytime if you ask me, I want to be either a journalist and a full-time writer. Journalism, yes, I used to enjoy. It has given me a lot of privilege of traveling around the world, as a sports journalist, to report events and meet a lot of celebrities, people that we normally don't get to meet. That's a journalist privilege anyway. And that's one of the incentives of the job. And yes, come to that question, I can't answer for other novelists, but then I think it's a natural extension. Being a novelist is a natural extension for a print journalist. Hello.
Hello, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Now, it's not a question, but there's a comment by Raji Ashokan. Raji Ashokan says, what you said, that is right. There is no responsibility, reputation, and relevance in media right now. So that's a comment from her.
Thank you. I hope, yeah. Anything else?
Any more questions, dear participants? Do we have any questions? There's one more question. Yes,
sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was nice listening to you, sir. Though it was not structured, at times it's very easy to listen to unstructured things.
Nina knows me. I'm a very unorganized person. So,
though I'm meeting you for the first time in the virtual platform, Nina ma'am used to tell me I'm her student. Now I'm doing my first year PG in literature.
Yeah. Okay.
So my question is that, not question, I want to tell you something is that these days everyone is using social medias. I think you might have come across those news like Karma News, Marunadan Malayali, and it's neither news nor something fact. Like I used to see some headlines like this: "See what happened to the actress on her first night."
Yeah. Yeah. Please complete it.
Yeah, and like what happened to the lady who was crossing the road? What's there in it? And I could see more than 33K views on it. And the comments, there will be more than 1K plus comments, and all the bullshit is written in the comment. Like who or what can put a full stop to these things? Like with no value at all. And there are like mushrooms, there are many news channels coming up. So
there is no one thing. These headlines want you to click, because most of their revenue comes from clicks, the number of clicks. So they want to hook you into that story, making you click on the headline. Okay, that's one. Second, there's nothing that we can do. I think recently central government has come up with a bill or something to bring all these online media under information ministry or something like that. I think it's good, because right now there is no sense of accountability. They can write whatever they want to. See, for one of the channels you mentioned, I don't want to mention, they said, ask your mom. These kind of language, we can't even think. Imagine, when we were journalists, at that time, there is some sort of civility. That's what I said, depth of civility, depth of empathy, and decency. It's all happening. It can be seen in the language we use, both spoken and written.
So the near future, we cannot find a full stop for this, I guess.
I think there is a law, and then the law comes as a double-edged sword, as a censorship and also for some kind of accountability. Now, I for a person don't agree with these kind of a free fall of news online news organization. They write anything they want to. This is absolutely crap.
And as a journalist, what is your opinion about trolls? Now, trolls are like leading, like as if media is leading. What's your opinion on trolls?
Now, some of them are good, but then most of them is a bit vulgar. Some are creative, and I like creative.
Need to be banned or not?
No, it shouldn't be banned, because banning is like censorship. But then we should have that some kind of a freedom comes with responsibility. That responsibility should be there in you and me. When we sit,
trolling is a kind of weapon these days.
Yeah, I mean that's what I said. It has to come from it's from each individual whether I should do it or not. I think that's a hypothetical situation, but then that's all we can do. What can we do? There is, internet is open. You have ways and means of doing it. How can I stop you unless you have been censored, right?
As I was listening to a talk, I was reminded of the books that I read long back of VKN. Mr. Payan was coming in my mind.
Yeah.
So that character was so interesting, and when he was talking about media, he was coming into my mind.
Yeah.
And one more thing I actually wanted to ask you, but I forgot.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Katrina. Yeah.
So we have one more question.
Please.
From Kiran Susan Joseph Sebastian. She says, "Thank you very much, sir, for the extremely candid views. With reference to your experience in the Middle East, kindly share your thoughts on the difference in the media ethics as expressed by the media houses in the Middle East and in India."
Okay. See, first of all, Middle East, the country that I worked in is not a democratic country. Okay, so there is no illusion of a free press. We know that we can't write anything against the rulers, even a slight criticism about the religion they practiced or the rulers. Nothing, anything, that's there. That is a given. We agree. But when it comes to India, it's a free country. It's a democratic country, and that's why India is different. That's why those countries are different. I was a sports journalist most of the time, so I didn't have to face all these kind. I was covering international events. Where would I get a chance to meet Nadal and Roger Federer and all those people? Other than in the Middle Eastern country. So that's, for me, that is okay. But then at the same time, I don't say that journalism is better in the Middle East. No, never. Hello, Nina.
Yes, sir. So I think that's it. Any other questions? No, I guess not.
Okay.
Should we wait for 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone has any queries, you can ask now.
Or you can buy the cliffhangers and read.
Yes, it's a beautiful read. It's a delightful read.
Such a small plug at the end of the speech,
And also the Shamal days. We're waiting for your Shamal days.
Yeah, I'm just finishing. I have a deadline now to finish my last manuscript. Last version of the manuscript. So.
Okay, sir. So I think
that's about journalism in the Middle East.
Yes. Okay. So I think that's it.
Yeah. As he's an author, I could ask something related to literature, I guess.
Sorry?
I will ask something about literature.
Yeah, please.
It's a doubt which I had for a long time, that from a young age, we are supposed to by heart poems. like poems of some big writers, poets, etc. And I have asked many, why are we by hearting these lines? Till now, I haven't got an answer to get satisfied with. Sir, let it be in any literature, English, Malayalam, or Hindi, whatever. Do you feel there is a need to by heart these things? Like poetry is some spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, as Wordsworth said. Like literature is something to be enjoyed and not to be learned. Isn't it that right, sir?
Yeah.
As an author, how do you see it?
Couple of things for me. I also write poetry, even though I don't say I'm a poet. For me, I don't understand the need to recite poem in a very musical way. I don't follow that kind of practice. Why? എന്തിനാ കവിത വളരെ സംഗീതാത്മകമായി വായിക്കുന്നത്? എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലാവുന്നില്ല. I mean, that's poetry is not that. In my book, poetry is different. Poetry is magic. Poetry can be a moment of silence. Poetry can be it's very difficult to define poetry. It's life itself. It's for me, it's within me as the breath that I have within me. So I carry poetry everywhere I go. Every passing moment I carry poetry. That's what I believe. But then for me to recite it and learn it by heart, I don't know why. I don't feel the need. But literature is important because it illuminates our mind. When we go through different phases in our life, literature comes handy. Unlike a formula that we learn in physics, it doesn't help us in our life other than in a practical way. But then literature helps us in a manifold way. It applies to our mind, it applies to our heart. It helps us to become better human beings, or face the challenges we have in our life. That's what literature does to us. But by learning poetry by heart, I don't fully agree. I don't see the need to it.
So even I have the same opinion. For me, by hearting is a nightmare. I can by heart formula from maths and physics, but by hearting some poetry is a nightmare because we won't get the proper feeling what the poet intended, and we are trying to put that into our mind. It's such a difficult thing.
Yeah,
I think the system will change for the good, and at least in the near future.
Thanks. Let's hope so.
So, sir, shall we wind up there?
Yes. Thank you, Nina. Thank you,
Let me
Department of
now.
English, St. Joseph's College, Pavarati, for having me, for listening to my rather ramblings rather than, as you said, a studied piece. Thank you for that 1 hour of patience.
Our delight and pleasure to have you, sir. Let me invite Teresa Sednavagis, faculty.
Hello. Yep.
Gratitude is one of the least articulate of the emotions, especially when it is deep. We have reached the end of this wonderful event. It's my privilege to propose a word of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this webinar happen. On behalf of the Department of English, St. Joseph's Arts and Science College, Pavarti, and the entire fraternity of this institution, first of all, I extend my most sincere thanks to our chief speaker of the day, Mr. Sabin Iqbal, for his thought-provoking and interesting lecture on media ethics and literature. You are an exemplary person, sir, and we have a lot to learn from you. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. On behalf of St. Joseph's Arts and Science College, it's a great honor for me to express our thanks to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I must thank our director, Reverend Father Jijoti Tai CMI, wholeheartedly for his continuing support and guidance for organizing such an event. We have been fortunate enough to have him as a director who had been there to render all the technical assistance and service for this event from its inception period onwards. Thank you, Father Jijo, for being the catalyst that stimulated us to do our best and standing as pillars of strength. I'm short of words to express my gratitude to the captain of our college, respected Principal Dr. P.T. Jose, sir, for his unending motivation. His guidance and support had helped us to move forward with confidence and energy. With a deep sense of appreciation, we thank you, sir. Thank you. A special mention to Mrs. Munira, faculty, Department of English, University College Trivandrum, Mr. Deepak O. Nair, and Campus Zine Group for their technical assistance and support in this entire endeavor. A big thank you to you all. I express my sincere gratitude to all the participants from various academic disciplines that had turned this webinar into a grand success with your presence and enthusiastic participation. Thank you all. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of highly motivated and dedicated colleagues who know their job and are result-oriented. I would like to express our deep gratitude to the coordinator of the department, Dr. Shirley MD, for her untiring guidance and moral support. Thank you, ma'am. Big thanks to our beloved head of department, Mrs. Nina Priyadarshini, for her perpetual motivation and assistance. Thank you, Nina. Mr. Clement Lofson, the joint coordinator, rather the tech savvy of our department, a big thank you to you for the technical aid you provided throughout this webinar. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Divya K. Krishnan, Mr. Arun Francis, and Dr. Sunny Tagalat. A special thanks to you for your unflinching support and coordination. I would like to thank our office staff, especially Mr. Lijo, I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zones. Thank you everyone once again for making this event a successful one. Thank you. Have a great day.